Hi, I'm going to be reading some poetry, The Faerie Queen by Edmund Spenser. And the truth is that I'm writing a poem and I want to make my mind to sing with the music of iambic pentameter before I go and spend some time writing um, to make it flow more easily. So I thought I would read aloud some poetry to myself, and if anyone wants to listen to me. The Faerie Queen from the 1590s, 1596, it shows here. The Faerie Queen disposed into 12 books fashioning 12 moral virtues. So it's advertised here. This allegory about moral virtues and Protestantism and Catholicism is written even in the 1590s with sort of antique spellings. And I will basically read it, trying to get the rhymes, but also trying to say the words closer to how they are pronounced today in general, just so you can understand it. Of course, you know, for example, the U's are going to be V's if you're reading it, and the V's U's a lot of the times. But I'll try and make it sound easily understandable. So here is the I don't know, the prologue, you might call it, to the first book. Lo, I, the man whose muse whilome did mask, as time her taught, in lowly shepherd's weeds, am now enforced a far unfitter task, for trumpet stern to change mine oaten reeds, and sing of knights and ladies' gentle deeds, whose praises having slept in silence long, me all too mean, the sacred muse reads to blazon broad amongst her learned throng. Fierce wars and faithful loves shall moralize my song. Help then, O holy Virgin, chief of nine, thy weaker novice to perform thy will, lay forth out of thine everlasting scrine the antique rolls which there lie hidden still, of fairy knights and fairest Tanakill, whom that most noble Britain prince so long sought through the world and suffered so much ill, that I must rue his undeserved wrong. O help thou my weak wit and sharpen my dull tongue. Now, there's a couple things that have been happening in here so far. The first thing, Spenser is referring to switching his, how did he say it? For trumpet stern to change mine oaten reeds. He'd been writing pastoral poetry, and now he's going to write about, as he says, knights and ladies. O holy Virgin, chief of nine. He's asking for inspiration, for help. The nine muses, of course. And then he goes on in asking for help. And thou, most dreaded imp of highest Jove, fair Venus' son, that with thy cruel dart at that good knight so cunningly didst rove, that glorious fire it kindled in his heart, lay now thy deadly Heben bow apart, and with thy mother mild come to mine aid. Come both, and with you bring triumphant Mart, in loves and gentle jollities arrayed, after his murderous spoils and bloody rage allayed. It seems that Mart is a character, I think, that he's bringing, but he's asking there Cupid. Cupid is the imp of highest Jove, fair Venus' son. And with them eke, O goddess heavenly bright, mirror of grace and majesty divine, great lady of the greatest isle, whose light, like Phoebus' lamp, throughout the world doth shine, Shed thy fair beams into my feeble eyne, and raise my thoughts, too humble and too vile, to think of that true glorious type of thine, the argument of mine afflicted style, the which to hear vouchsafe, O dearest dread, awhile. And with them eke, he says. So along with them, eke means also. It's related to the German word auch that they still have also. He's asking for this great lady of the greatest isle, this great lady of Britain, to raise his thoughts, to think of that glorious type of thine, the argument of mine afflicted style, to think of that great type of thine. I think that we might be talking about Queen Elizabeth here. And the argument of mine afflicted style, this is kind of I think this is a humble line about his writing, perhaps to call it afflicted. When he says, the which to hear vouchsafe, O dearest dread, a while, I think that's like dread sovereign. And in fact, the first book of the Faerie Queen, I do know that Spenser came and got to read it aloud in the presence of Queen Elizabeth. So Canto 1, the patron of true holiness, foul error doth defeat. I guess I should just say it normally. The patron of true holiness, foul error doth defeat. Is what's going to be in the canto. Hypocrisy him to entrap, doth to his home entreat. All right, here's the beginning of Book 1, Canto 1 of the Faerie Queen. A gentle knight was pricking on the plain, clad in mighty arms and silver shield, wherein old dints of deep wounds did remain, the cruel marks of many a bloody field. Yet arms till that time did he never wield. His angry steed did chide his foaming bit, as much disdaining to the curb to yield. Full jolly knight he seemed, and fair did sit, as one for knightly jests and fierce encounters fit. I pronounce it jests. This is the way Spenser spells it. I put it in the comment, Giusts, but I take that to be like GES, perhaps, GEST, jests like deeds, like gesta in Latin, but it might be jousts. I'm not sure. As one for knightly jousts and fierce encounters fit. It's probably what it is. But on his breast a bloody cross he bore, the dear remembrance of his dying lord, for whose sweet sake that glorious badge he wore, and dead as living ever him adored. Upon his shield the like was also scored, for sovereign hope which in his help he had. Right faithful true he was in deed and word, but of his cheer did seem too solemn sad, yet nothing did he dread, but ever was adrad. Okay, that word, adrad, spelled Y-R-A-D. I think he means he ever was dreaded. I don't know what the allegorical significance of the fact that this Red Cross Knight has never wielded his arms before, but I'm sure scholars have thought about that. Also, I could talk about the rhyme scheme of each of these 9-line stanzas goes like A, B, A, B, B for the first lines of it. But this one really has a very rhymey sound because A is rhyming with bore, the end of the first line, and B is rhyming with Lord, the end of the second line. So, but on his breast a bloody cross he bore. Some nice alliteration, but on his breast a bloody cross he bore, the dear remembrance of his dying Lord. Lord is not the rhyme with bore, it's the B rhyme. So the rhyme with bore is the next line. For whose sweet sake that glorious badge he wore. And then here's the rhyme with Lord. And dead as living ever him adored. Then here's the next B rhyme. So it goes A, B, A, then it goes B, B. So adored. Upon his shield the like was also scored. And then on the sixth line of a Spenserian stanza, it goes to C. For sovereign hope, which in his health he had, and then it comes back to rhyme with the B line one more time. So that was Lord, adored, scored. He has right faithful true he was in deed and word, which today is not a perfect rhyme, but. And then there's two more lines that rhyme with C. So we had, which in his health he had, rhymed with, but of his cheer did seem too solemn sad. Yet nothing did he dread, but ever was adrad. So if you're writing Spenserian stanzas, you need to pick carefully on that second line, on that B line, because it has to be something that you're going to be able to come up with 3 more rhymes for, right? And but your first line, you only need to come up with 1 more rhyme for it. So listen to the next stanza. Upon a great adventure he was bound, or bond. Upon a great adventure he was bond. That greatest glory Anna to him gave, that greatest glorious queen of Faerie land, to win him worship and her grace to have. So these rhymes are not working perfectly in modern. Gave, have. Upon a great adventure he was bound, or bond. It's spelled bond. It's supposed to rhyme with laund, of Faerie land. So you only need 1 rhyme for that first line, laund, bond, and laund. But then gave rhymes with have, and which of all earthly things he most did crave. Then here comes the C rhyme. And ever as he rode, his heart did earn to prove. That's yearn. It's spelled E-A-R-N-E, but it's yearn. Did yearn to prove his puissance in battle brave, upon his foe and his new force to learn, upon his foe a dragon horrible and stern. Puissance is power, like in French. A lovely lady rode him fair beside, upon a lowly ass, more white than snow, yet she much whiter, but the same did hide under a veil that wimpled was full low, and over all a black stole she did throw, as one that inly mourned. So was she sad, and heavy sat upon her palfrey slow. Seemed in heart some hidden care she had, and by her in a line a milk-white lamb she lad. So pure and innocent as that same lamb, she was in life and every virtuous lore, and by descent from royal lineage came, of ancient kings and queens that had of yore their scepters stretched from east to western shore, and all the world in their subjection held, till that infernal fiend with foul uproar forwasted all their land and them expelled, whom to avenge she had this night from far compelled. Behind her far away a dwarf did lag, that lazy seemed in being ever last, or wearied with the bearing of her bag of needments at his back. Thus as they passed, the day with clouds was sudden overcast, and angry Jove, an hideous storm of rain, did pour into his lemon's lap so fast, that every wight to shroud it did constrain, and this fair couple eke to shroud themselves were fain. So were fain means they wanted to. Eke means, like I said, also, like the German auch today. There's a funny word here, lemon, spelled L-E and then M-A-N, leman. It means lover. Um, what Spenser's done here is so sudden. The day with clouds was sudden overcast, and angry Jove, an hideous storm of rain, did pour into his leman's lap so fast. I don't know exactly what he's thinking. Of course, there's the story of the shower of gold that goes into Danae's lap from Jove, and but there is also maybe a way in which the earth itself is Jove's lover. Anyway, so the couple, and this fair couple eke to shroud themselves were fain. Enforced to seek some covert nigh at hand, a shady grove not far away they spied, that promised aid and the tempest to withstand, whose lofty trees, aclad with summer's pride, did spread so broad that heaven's light did hide, not pierceable with power of any star, and all within were paths and alleys wide, with footing worn and leading inward far. Fair harbour that them seems, so in they entered are. And forth they pass, with pleasure forward led, joying to hear the birds' sweet harmony, which there enshrouded from the tempest dread, seemed in their song to scorn the cruel sky. Much can they praise the trees so straight and high, the sailing pine, the cedar proud and tall, the vine-prop elm, the poplar never dry, the builder oak, sole king of forests all, the aspen good for staves, the cypress funeral. The laurel, mead of mighty conquerors and poets sage, the fir that weepeth still, the willow worn of forlorn paramours, the yew obedient to the bender's will, the birch for shafts, the sallow for the mill, the myrrh sweet bleeding in the bitter wound, the warlike beech, the ash for nothing ill, the fruitful olive and the platen round, the carver holm, the maple seldom inward sound. Led with delight, they thus beguile the way, until the blustering storm is overblown, when weening to return whence they did stray, they cannot find that path which first was shown, but wander to and fro in ways unknown, furthest from end then, when they nearest ween, that makes them doubt their wits be not their own. So many paths, so many turnings seen, that which of them to take in divers doubt they been. At last, resolving forward still to fare, till that some end they find, or in or out, that path they take that beaten seemed most bare, and like to lead the labyrinth about, which when by tract they hunted had throughout, at length it brought them to a hollow cave amid the thickest woods. The champion stout eftsoons dismounted from his courser brave, and to the dwarf awhile his needless spear he gave. Be well aware, quoth then that lady mild, lest suddenly mischief ye too rash provoke. The danger hid, the place unknown and wild, breeds dreadful doubts. Oft fire is without smoke, and peril without show. Therefore your stroke, Sir Knight, withhold till further trial made. Ah, lady, said he, shame were to revoke the forward footing for an hidden shade. Virtue gives herself light through darkness for to wade. Yea, but, quoth she, the peril of this place I better wot than you, though now too late to wish you back return with foul disgrace, yet wisdom warns whilst foot is in the gate to stay the step ere forced to retreat. This is the wandering wood, and this error's den, a monster vile whom God and man does hate. Therefore I read, beware, fly, fly, quoth then the fearful dwarf. This is no place for living men. One thing that is a little bit difficult in Spenserian stanzas, or actually just in writing poetry of this type, is to fit in the he said or she said as you go along. It's kind of awkward. So she's talking here. Sir Knight, withhold till further trial made. Ah, lady, said he, shame were to revoke. So it just kind of goes into it. And then the next stanza begins. Yea, but, quoth she. I think he doesn't want to begin or end every line. So far, we haven't seen it as like the end of the phrase to say, he said. He kind of, or the beginning. He replied. He said. He's done quote, said he, quoth she. And then he does one more. He says, the dwarf says, fly, fly, quoth then the fearful dwarf. This is no place for living men. And that then is the rhyme. Fly, fly, quoth then the fearful dwarf. So there's an enjambment going across the line there. This is no place for living men, but full of fire and greedy hardiment, the youthful knight could not for aught be stayed, but forth unto the darksome hole he went, and looked in. His glistering armor made a little glooming light, much like a shade, by which he saw the ugly monster plain, half like a serpent horribly displayed, but the other half did woman's shape retain, most loathsome, filthy, foul, and full of vile disdain. And as she lay upon the dirty ground, her huge long tail her den all overspread, it was in knots and many bouts upwound, pointed with mortal sting. Of her there bred 1,000 young ones, which she daily fed, sucking upon her poisonous dugs, each one of sundry shapes, yet all ill-favoured. Soon as that uncouth light upon them shone, into her mouth they crept, and sudden all were gone. Their dam upstart, out of her den afraid, and rushed forth, hurling her hideous tail about her cursed head, whose folds displayed were stretched now forth at length without entrail. She looked about, and seeing one in mail, armed to point, sought back to turn again, for light she hated as the deadly bale. I wont in a desert darkness to remain, where plain none might her see, nor she see any plain. Which when the valiant elf perceived, he leapt as lion fierce upon the flying prey, and with his trenchant blade her boldly kept from turning back, and forced her to stay. Therewith in rage she loudly gan to bray, and turning fierce her speckled tail advanced, threatening her angry sting him to dismay, who not aghast his mighty hand enhanced, the stroke down from her head unto her shoulder glanced. So advanced, enhanced, glanced. Much daunted with that dint, her sense was dazed, yet kindling rage herself she gathered round, and all at once her beastly body raised with doubled force as high above the ground, though wrapping up her wreathed stern around, leapt fierce upon his shield, and her huge train all suddenly about his body wound. That hand or foot to stir he strove in vain. God help the man so wrapped in error's endless train. I think that there's a couple things. One, he's being very forward with the allegory. This is error, and he says God. He explains that God helped the man in error's chain. I think also that C.S. Lewis, who wrote not quite so allegorical of works as the Faerie Queene, but I think he might have copied this this wound in the toils of the serpent scene a little bit. I mean, you wouldn't have to copy it from the Faerie Queene. There's other places probably you can get it, but it's in the silver chair the witch wraps around the prince. Anyway, I think I need to get to writing my poem. Bye-bye.